Hello, let's talk about substance dualism, Rene Descartes' theory of mind that posits that there are two distinct substances, right? The mental, thinking substance and the physical substance. Now, the mental represents our mind or our souls, while the physical represents the universe that we live in. Dualism's intellectual opponent, one of them at least, is physicalism, which gets rid of the immaterial mind or soul and simply just looks at everything physical. It says everything is physical. Now, one of the main arguments against Cartesian dualism is the problem of mental causation. And the proponent of this problem asks a very simple question. How can the non-physical have any effect whatsoever on the physical? More aptly put, consider this example. Imagine a woman, she just woke up from a nap. She decides she really wants to go for a walk, right? Now, if dualism is true, her physical mind has come to this conclusion and then governed her body to act upon it, right? And this is going to result in her taking a walk. So how this works is the problem. How does the mind tell the body what it needs to do? Where does the interaction occur? And how, more importantly, how does it occur? The universe is subject to a set of laws, and all interactions follow these laws, right? Laws of physics. How can something that exists outside the network of these laws govern physical bodies? The physicalist is simply asking, how does one sort of thing influence the other sort of thing, given that the mental exists outside of the physical realm? This is a legitimate concern. This problem has led to many creative solutions in an attempt to find a way to solve the problem. Descartes went to great lengths to answer this question. He went out and proclaimed that the pineal gland was the seat of the soul, and yeah, that was it. That was the explanation for mental causation. So mental causation has been seen within the field of philosophy of mind as one of the biggest problems with substance dualism. Now, I'm going to say that the problem of mental causation is not a problem at all. It has no effect on substance dualism's truth or falsity. But that it raises a much larger problem for substance dualism. So first, let's look at why it's not a problem. If we assume that substance dualism is true, why should we assume that the mechanism or the process of mental causation should in any way be physically verifiable or detectable? When Descartes said that the pineal gland was the seat of the soul, the solution to mental causation, it would not have at all answered the problem of mental causation. It would have simply given a location for this mysterious phenomena, while the phenomena itself remains mysterious. There's no solution to the problem of mental causation by saying the pineal gland, which famously false. A substance dualist essentially must tacitly accept that mental causation is indeed a mysterious phenomena, and they should be an explicit admission of the supernatural, right? Because everything that is immaterial is not part of the physical world, not part of the natural world. If the dualist is in firm belief of the supernatural soul or mind, why should the dualist refrain from accepting supernatural explanations for mental causation? Why would the dualist or their materialist critic assume that the solution to the problem would be anything other than supernatural? In essence, I'm kind of saying that when a physicalist poses this question against a substance dualist, they're sort of begging the question. They're saying, how can you explain substance dualism given a physicalist explanation? I mean, the only explanation they could give would be a naturalistic one, and that would not be part of the theory of substance dualism, so it doesn't work. There isn't really a problem here. If the nature of immaterial minds are imperceptible, shouldn't the interaction between the physical and the mental also be imperceptible and wholly supernatural in explanation? So I'm going to use an example to kind of illustrate this and make it crystal clear for us here. Unfortunately, it's a matrix example, so bear with me. I think it'll work. So imagine a computer-generated world, much like our own, it seems much like our own, but it's much like the one from the Matrix films. Imagine that people were strapped into chairs with helmets on their heads, and they're connected to this world for all of their life, right? And imagine that this world to them seems every bit as real as our world seems to us. And it has, a set of laws of physics just like our own world has. Let's also imagine that there are philosophers in this digital world, right? And they are, interested in philosophy of mind. They're trying to understand the problem of mental causation. And there are physicalists and substance dualists arguing with one another, just like our world. So even if a dualist, that is, in such a world were to nail exactly how their true mind interacted with their bodies in that world, there would never be any way of proving or giving a satisfactory explanation of how the interaction takes place, right? Because the interaction takes place outside of their entire universe. They can't, they can't take a picture of it. All they can do is suggest that this might be the case, but they can never ever prove it. These philosophers could ponder and they could reason for the entire world's existence and never find the answer, precisely because the interaction takes place outside of their reality. No thought experiment, scientific discovery, nor set of assumptions could ever actually render there a satisfactory explanation or proof of mental causation. And if dualism is true, then we should expect the same problem to arise for us. In other words, if dualism is true, the dualist cannot prove it. They can't explain it because the interaction occurs outside of the physical universe and it's impossible to account for. So where does this leave us? We have at least two competing hypotheses, right? We've got substance dualism on the left, we have physicalism on the right, and somewhere else out there we've got pan-protopsychism, right? Jokes. Modern critics of physicalism, like David Chalmers and John Searle, will dismiss physicalism for its inability to fully account for the enduring I, the sense of self throughout time, for qualia, the phenomenal aspects of our subjective experience, and on the basis of intentionality, or the aboutness of our thoughts and attitudes that they have towards other people and things. Now, physicalism at least has a bit of a running start on explaining these. It's not necessarily complete, but it can at least explain these phenomena to some degree. Now, I'm going to argue, and have been arguing, that substance dualism can't explain anything. Nothing. It has no explanatory power at all, past positing that the immaterial soul as an explanation for these problems. How the immaterial soul explains these problems is something no substance dualist is capable of giving an account of. And any account that is given may be dismissed outright on the basis that it can never be verified in any way at all. It might be the case that all logically possible accounts of dualism can be considered equally probable, right? Given substance dualism's abject failure as a hypothesis that can explain itself. It simply cannot explain itself. If we hold the proposition that substance dualism is true, we no longer have anywhere to go. No further philosophical explanations nor inquiry would lead us to any facts any more probable than the next, and we would be left with no way to evaluate any further claims past the original claim that substance dualism is true. To put it bluntly, substance dualism is incapable of telling us anything about itself. It can never explain how it solves the problems that it claims to solve, because all the important parts happen in the immaterial realm. They happen outside of our universe, and we have no way of verifying their truth or falsity in any way at all. Substance dualism is, in essence, a solution without any content. It appears that when we examine it, that substance dualism really is just another gap-filling argument or explanation, and one that it lacks explanatory power to give the position any force. Certainly physicalist explanations of qualia and intentionality are debatably incomplete, but it's impossible to say they're not significantly more complete and more useful than any explanation substance dualism could ever offer. The only real reason that we ought to assume that the immaterial soul can account for qualia, or intentionality, or even the enduring sense of self at all is because the substance dualist tells us that it can. They can never explain how this immaterial soul, or self, or mind can do any of this. Given that substance dualism cannot explain anything, I suggest that there is no reason to hold the theory, on the basis that any account that it can solve the hard problems within philosophy of mind are just as probable as accounts that it cannot solve those same problems, or even contradictory accounts. They're all equally probable because there's no way to prove any of it. There's no way to verify any of it. Because, as I've said over and over and over in this video, substance dualism is a theory or an explanation entirely devoid of content. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing what you all have to say about this.